The Marner return, some hat tricks, and some second guessing. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Monday, January 26, 2026. Vic Morren and hello.
I'm back. I'm out of the car.
And you've been missed over the last couple of shows, but you're right in time to discuss a lot of happenings over the weekend. We're going to start with Mitch Marner's return in Toronto, Friday evening. Vegas Golden Knights come in, and for all intents and purposes, I did not get a warm and fuzzy from this. And I thought Rogers did a great job documenting this, that the Golden Knights were kind of blocking the way of the cameramen coming in. And yes, he did have the return out on the ice. He did get the video tribute. He did make the one twirl and pat his chest. But boy, this was a lot more along the lines of John Tavares going back to UBS Arena and Jack Eichel going back to Buffalo more than it was Jonathan Toews returning to the United Center last week.
Yeah, and I think the main thing on here is when the players make a decision that they want out, the fans are not forgiving. When the players have to leave, either through a trade or through a non-re-signing, then the fans give them a much more warm feeling when they come back. I wasn't surprised that the Leaf fans were booing Marner because it was obviously his choice to leave. I mean, he decided he didn't want to be there anymore, and he got what he wanted. He got to go to Vegas. It was a somewhat of a fake trade for Nicholas Waugh, only because I think Vegas wanted to make sure that they didn't get hit with tampering, so they gave them Nicholas Waugh. But I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed that the Leafs couldn't come up with a better video than to say, "Welcome back, Mitch." I mean, welcome back. You've been 9 years there, and that's what you get is welcome back. Well, that's what you say to somebody that comes for their second time ever.
On this night, we saw cheering, and I think it was actually more polite appreciation for Marner after the video ran, and then they booed him every time he touched the puck, which almost had a comedic element to it. And if you want the other side of this, in terms of how fans feel, there was a fan that had a sign that said, "Thank you, Mitch, for 9 great seasons." And in between the words great and seasons, it had the word regular. And I think that speaks to a lot of the frustration that Maple Leaf fans had, was that here was a guy that was terrific during the course of his career there, and as just said, 9 years, but never had a truly distinctive playoff. And for a franchise that has not won a cup, even made a final since 1967, I think that speaks volumes.
It does, but I've heard the same nonsense over and over and over again. He's one player on a team. I mean,
True.
What do you want him to do? Not play well during the regular season and then play well in the playoffs? He's paid his money to play well during the regular season. The playoffs, you don't get paid. You get paid during the regular season. He can only play as well as he can during the regular season to set his team up for the best possible position in the playoffs. And then as a team, they didn't win anything. But to put it all down to Marner, or for that matter, Matthews or anybody else, I think is ridiculous. It's a team that didn't win in the playoffs, not just one player.
But don't you see this as a situation, and like you said, it's not just Marner or Matthews or Tavares or Nylander, which was referred to as the core four for all of this time, that there was an inability to adapt to what playoff hockey is. And I think that Marner played a role in that failure.
He did. But I mean, what could he have done by himself? So sure, they're frustrated because they don't win anything. But I mean, you're going to say now, you're going to criticize him because he's had great regular season and the team didn't do well in the playoffs. So, I mean, I just don't get it. I don't agree with the whole thing.
Well, with the big regular seasons comes that expectation in the playoffs. And for them just not to have been able to meet that.
So I guess what we should see then at the Garden next year is thank you, Panarin, for so many great regular seasons. And, make sure we emphasize to him that he didn't do anything in the playoffs. Like, let's deny what he did good by throwing it in his face what he didn't do well.
He did score that overtime goal. Panarin
one
did
goal,
against
big
Pittsburgh
deal. One goal. So what? You scored one goal. Stefan Matto scored a big goal too. I mean, it's not the same.
All right, let's move on, because also in Friday's game between the Maple Leafs and the Golden Knights, Anthony Stolarz made his first appearance since November 11th. And there's been a lot of question as to whether or not he should have started in this game. Of course, Golden Knights are a high-profile team. They wound up playing Colorado on Sunday, and then the red-hot Buffalo Sabres come in for the next game. So, of course, this is a run of good opponents that the Maple Leafs are facing. But he went down to the Marlies for a conditioning stint, never played a game there. And I guess the agreement was that the first action that Stolarz was going to see was going to be on the NHL level. But do you bring him back in a game that's already got so much high-profile stuff surrounding it? And he didn't look particularly good in this game either. Made some good saves, but only stopped 25 of 30 shots.
I don't know why he didn't play for the Marlies and get his situation better to be ready to go back at the NHL level. It's sort of stunning that you go down to the Marlies on a conditioning stint, which is, when you say go down to the Marlies, it's only 15 minutes away from the Scotiabank Arena. But you play for the Marlies in practice only and don't play a game. It was really surprising to me.
The Maple Leafs' woes continued on Sunday. They lost to the Colorado Avalanche 4-1, and like we said at the top, there were a bunch of hat tricks this weekend. Brock Nelson had 3 goals for the Avalanche. But the one thing that's getting a lot of attention is a shot up at the press box where William Nylander and 4 other Maple Leafs were sitting, and Nylander decided to put up his middle finger at the camera and then smile when the team was down 3-0. And they weren't pissing a drop in this game. And afterwards, Nylander offered what I would regard as somewhat of a weak apology, saying it was out of frustration. Well, if you're frustrated, then I don't think you smile after flipping the bird at the camera.
It's bad. It's really bad. And it shows the fans were irate about this, and so they should be. What I noticed, too, was I guess this new dress code thing has really taken a fall backwards, because all of those Maple Leafs that were sitting in the press box were dressed like they were at a barbecue for the weekend. I mean, they weren't dressed like professionals. Guys are making millions of dollars, and they're sitting there with hats and sweatshirts on and that. But it's unfortunate that William Nylander did that, because that will be remembered for a long, long time.
I think you also pile on to this that the Leafs have lost 6 out of 7, including all 4 games on this current homestand. And like we said, they host Buffalo in their next game, who are 18-3-1 in their last 22. So all that feel good about the Leafs getting back into the race, they are now in wild card 5 and 5 points out of the second wild card. So they're going backwards as fast as they made up ground.
They are, and things just don't seem to be able to take a turn for them. And it's unthinkable that they could miss the playoffs. But you know what? They very much could. And they're sitting out of the playoffs looking in right now. And by the way, what about that ugly gash on the top of Craig Berube's head that he says that he suffered in the gym? Apparently, something fell on his head in the gym, knocked him out cold. He was in the hospital for 6 hours and showed up at the game with staples going across his head like as if he'd been cut with a skate.
It was an unbelievable look when he took his hat off for the press conference to show that. And I actually sent you a photo of Mikhail Gorbachev because that's what it looked like.
It was even worse because he coached the game without a hat on. And all you could see when the camera went over there was this horrible gash that went the whole width of his head in a semicircle. And I mean, it was really bad. I'm surprised he was even there coaching.
One of the toughest guys in NHL history, and of course that extends to behind the bench. But I wanted to go back to Colorado for 1 second. On Sunday's game, we mentioned Brock Nelson with the hat trick. But on Friday, they dropped a 7-3 decision to the Flyers at home. Owen Tippett with a hat trick in that game for Philadelphia. But entering that game yesterday against the Leafs, the Avs were 1-2-2 in their last 5. They've given up 22 goals in those games, including 7 twice. So every team is going through fits and starts, documented it all season. But one of the things that I've been looking at with Colorado is their ability or lack thereof to defend when they really need to defend. You see this as a bump in the road or something that we need to continue to keep our eyes on?
No, I just think it's a bump in the road. This is a great hockey team. Boy, they're just stacked. If they don't win the Stanley Cup this year, it'll be a travesty because they are so far ahead of the rest of the pack.
All right. Want to do some more second guessing?
Sure, bring it on.
All right. Well, we already hit on Stolarz, but this one's got a little bit different angle to it. On Saturday, the New York Islanders returned home after their 7-game road trip and dropped a 5-0 decision to the Buffalo Sabres. This was a 1-0 game. The final minute of the second period, when Matthew Barzal, Anders Lee, and Anthony Duclair got caught either up ice or out of position on the goal that made it 2-0. And head coach Patrick Roy elected to bench that line for the entire third period. Now, you and I went back and we looked at this goal together at the numerous breakdowns in coverage, in hustle, in just lack of getting back into good position to defend this goal. And you could see that there was fault with all 3 players here. Now, should Roy have just made a statement and said, okay, you guys aren't playing the first 2 shifts of the third period because the Islanders were still in the game at the time. But instead, he sits them for the entire final 20 minutes.
And basically made sure that he took his team out of the game. They didn't have a chance to come back with that line missing. Maybe he felt that they just didn't have it that night anyway, so they weren't going to win, and he was going to send a very harsh message to his team. The one guy that I feel bad for on that line is Anders Lee, because he works his butt off most nights. He's a really hard-working guy, good captain, good leader. Barzal, I don't think he really understands the game real well, and Duclair, he's off again, on again all the time. You never know what to expect out of him. But he certainly did send a message to those 3 by not putting them back on the ice after the second period.
If you're Matthew Darsh and you're sitting up watching this, though, what are your thoughts? Like, what are we doing here?
I would think so. If you're the manager in that situation, you're wondering. I don't know the relationship between Darch and Roy, but you must be thinking, I was hoping we would have a chance to come back in this game. But with one of our best lines out of the game, I don't think we've got any chance now.
And it certainly proved that because the Sabres tacked on 3 more goals after that. So, hey, I got a phone call coming in.
Okay.
Evan Bouchard is calling. So, want your take on this, that on Saturday, Bouchard gets his first ever 6-point game. I mean, not too many players have had 6 points in a game. First hat trick by an Edmonton defenseman in 20 years. 6-5 win over the Washington Capitals. Zach Hyman tied the game in the final minute. Connor McDavid with 5 points, including the overtime winner. And This was a game that our buddy Jack Michaels made feel so big. He really summed it up so well, saying a game like this is why you watch the National Hockey League. Because from an artistic standpoint, this was a mess, but it was such an entertaining mess that you couldn't turn away from it.
Yeah, and it seems like that. And you got to give Bonehead Bouchard credit. 6 points in a game. A hat trick is pretty hard to do for a defenseman. He's a great offensive defenseman. He's got a rocket of a shot. He can almost put it through the net. But, boy, his brain goes to sleep at times when he gives a puck away and comes up bad defensively. But for this night, he was great for the Oilers.
And Michael's call, even though on Saturdays for Hockey Night in Canada, it's got to be a little bit more tempered because it's national as opposed to local for most of the other games he does, was just exquisite. I mean, he is a must listen. Anybody that's got an NHL package, if you don't listen to Jack, you're missing out on something.
Yeah, he is a lot of fun to listen to, no doubt.
Fourth hat trick we're going to talk about, and this was Saturday in the Boston Bruins win over the Montreal Canadiens. Cole Caulfield got a hat trick for the Habs, so let's get this out of the way. But something that I found really notable in this game, that in the second period, Nikita Zadorov took a hit from the Canadian Zach Baldock, went down, and I texted you right after this, and I said, did you see this injury? All of his body weight came down, his leg bent in a way that you don't want it to bend. He had to be helped off, put no weight on that leg. And I'm thinking long-term injury, either broken ankle, knee, whatever, that maybe his season was going to be done. He comes back and plays 9 shifts in the third period, including the final 1 minute and 32 seconds of the game, with the Bruins protecting the lead. Morgan Geekie, back on the score sheet, scores 2 goals, including the game winner. The game-winning goal actually disappeared in the mesh of the net. And Bruins play-by-play announcer Judd Surratt said, I've never seen a goal disappear into the mesh like that. And I'm thinking, really? You didn't see Patrick Kane's game-winning goal for the Stanley Cup for the Blackhawks in 2010?
Yeah, really. Well, that was hidden a bit by the pad, too, of the goaltender. But all in all, quite a game for the Bruins when you think about it, and quite a season they're having when, a lot of people, including me, had written them off when you saw what kind of a team they were going to ice this year. But Marco Sturm has somehow found a method to get this team to play, and they've really surprised a lot of people.
We're going to talk about them and the Pittsburgh Penguins more on NHL Wraparound on Wednesday. But entering the week, Boston, wild card 2, 3 points clear of the Florida Panthers, because here's a team that nobody's going to want to see in the postseason if they get in. And the Panthers have now won 3 straight, back-to-back over the weekend. On Saturday, Brad Marchand returned in the overtime win against Minnesota. He missed 7 games with an undisclosed injury. He gets 2 goals and an assist. But the interesting thing here, game tied, third period, Panthers on the power play, and Marchand turns the puck over to MattBoldy for a breakaway that gave the Wild the lead. But then on the same power play, helped set up Sam Bennett for the tying goal, and then Marchand scores the winner. And you could start to see the confidence starting to brim in this team as they're the club, as I said, nobody wants to see if they get in the playoffs.
Oh, of course not, because they're the reigning champs, and they're going to be the champs until they're knocked out in the playoffs. And they've been to the final 3 years in a row. So never count them down and out until they are out.
I'm not sure they're going to be. And to underscore how things are going better for Florida, journeyman defenseman Tobias Bjornfot, who's in the lineup just due to the rash of injuries on that Florida back line, he entered Sunday's game for the Panthers against the Chicago Blackhawks with one career goal in 138 games. And that came as a member of the Los Angeles Kings on May 1st of 2021, which was obviously the extended season in terms of the calendar because of COVID. Anyway, he gets on the board for the first time in 109 games, and he manages to get a pair in the 5-1 win for the Panthers.
Joe, everything's going the right way right now, and you'll take them. If you're the coach, Paul Maurice, you'll take whatever you can get during this time of all these injuries and a little bit of chaos in as far as their trainer's room goes and people going in and going out. And so good for Tobias.
Another long drought came to an end in the Capitals' 3-1 win in Calgary on Friday that snapped a 4-game losing streak for the Caps. Of course, they went into Edmonton and dropped that overtime decision. But in that game in Calgary, Hendrix Lapierre scored his first goal in 91 games. His previous goal was March 18th, 2024, ironically, in Calgary. So for the Capitals, good on them to get 3 out of 4 points in Alberta, but they are still 5 points out, sitting in wild card 6 as the week begins.
That's a team, the Washington Capitals, who have gone up and down this season. We expected them to make the playoffs. I still expect them to make the playoffs, but it gets tougher and tougher now as the season goes on.
I think one thing that we are seeing also is that with the success of the Buffalo Sabres, the Boston Bruins, the Montreal Canadiens, the Detroit Red Wings, that these are clubs that maybe we weren't counting in the playoffs at the start of the season. I mean, I know that I wasn't, and I think you as well. And for the Capitals, that's going to mean having to get into the top 3 spots in the Metropolitan Division, because at this point, it appears that 5 teams in the East are coming from the Atlantic.
Right, and these teams that we thought were non-playoff teams are taking points away from teams that we thought were playoff teams, and the standings are all different than what we had predicted they would be. So it makes for a more exciting season, I guess, because you got more teams in the hunt, but it creates a lot of disappointment in these places where fans and media and organizations thought that they were definitely a playoff team, like the Washington Capitals.
Still time, but as we said, critical mass fast approaching in D.C. Let's go west. And a couple of teams feeling really good about themselves right now, the Anaheim Ducks and the Utah Mammoth. And on Sunday, the Ducks made it 7 consecutive wins with a 4-3 overtime victory in Calgary after trailing 2-0 and 3-2. Beckett Seneca, his first career hat trick, including the overtime winner. And you remember that this is a team playing without Mason McTavish, without Troy Terry, without Leo Carlson up front, and they still continue to put a string of wins together. The Ducks, 3rd in the Pacific, and they are 4 points safe in the wild card race as well in the Western Conference.
And this Beckett Seneca kid is something else. You got to see this guy play. He is really a spectacular player for the Ducks. As you said, got the hat trick in Calgary, but boy, he shows up a lot of nights when you watch the Ducks. You really notice this kid.
Seneca was the 3rd overall pick in the NHL draft in 2024. Not to be outdone, the Utah Mammoth, a 5-2 win over the Nashville Predators on Saturday for their 5th consecutive win, and just another sign that things starting to fall into place for the Mammoth. Lawson Krause, unable to play. Kyler Yamamoto steps in, scores his first goal since December 12th, added an assist. The Mammoth, 8-1-1 in their last 10, and they are the first wild card entering the week.
And they've improved this season as a group. They've matured. This is something that I got to admit, we did see this coming. We did see them getting better and better, and certainly Utah right now is exactly where they would want to be in a wild card position in the playoffs. and not where they've been the last many years, which is on the outside looking in, trying to claw their way up there. Their players are getting mature. They're putting in more time in their careers, and they're seeming to blossom together. So good for Utah, Bill Armstrong, and the Utah Mammoth.
Big streak came to an end on Saturday. The Tampa Bay Lightning falling 8-5 in Columbus in a game that they wound up finishing with only 15 skaters in this game. Mason Marchment, hat trick for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's got 8 goals, 3 assists, 11 points, and is a +6 in 9 games since coming over for Seattle. So certainly very good move for Don Waddell.
Yeah, and Mason Marchment doesn't seem to spend a lot of time in any one city. He's moved around quite a bit, but this is a good streak for him and a good thing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And as you said, good for Don Waddell. Don Waddell also made the coaching change, moving out Dean Evison and moving in Rick Bowness. And now Bowness is 5-1 in his 6 games that he's coached. So pretty good. They're wild card 8. They're 7 back. They're a long way back. But certainly they've been improvements since Rick Bowness has taken over.
Watch this game, and much like the Oilers-Capitals game, this one was pretty sloppy as well. And I texted you and I said, I think that the first team to 7 is going to win. And that's when it was 2-2 early in the first period. You could put a large amount of reason to that because of Tampa Bay's defense being so beat up. We mentioned that they finished the game with only 15 skaters and 4 defensemen because Eric Chernak was run into the end boards in the first period by Matthew Olivier. He kind of spun into that hit, left the game, did not return. They also lost Charles EdouardD'Astous in the third period and forward Gage Gonsalves in the first period. So just a real depleted lineup for John Cooper in dropping their first game in regulation time in 16.
Yeah, I mean, they have just been tremendous. They just wore out in this game, and they were too shorthanded. And give the Blue Jackets credit. They played hard and came away with the win, but they got a lot of work to be done there in Columbus.
Really happy when we get into the injury list and it's this short, and we actually have more returns than we do injuries. But the one that we're going to note here, Ryan Pulock, the defenseman for the New York Islanders, was out Saturday against the Buffalo Sabres with an upper body injury suffered in the last game of their road trip in Seattle. He's listed as day today, but they did get Bo Horvat back after missing 9 games with a lower body injury suffered on New Year's Day. For the Vancouver Canucks, Philip Hedl came back into the lineup Friday against New Jersey after missing the last 44 games with a concussion. He had 2 shots on goal in 18:29 of playing time. He also played on Sunday in the Canucks' loss against Pittsburgh. Only 1 shot in just under 17 minutes of play, but every time I watch this guy on a shift, I'm not just looking for him absorbing a potential big hit. It's almost as if anytime he gets brushed by another player, I get concerned.
And everybody should be concerned for him because this is something that is bad and could be a lifelong problem. It's not just having problems playing in the league. It's that, obviously, but he's a young man and these things don't go away. So hopefully, and we've said this for a few years now, Philip Hedl stays safe and stays out of the concussion protocol. But with every concussion, it makes the next one easier to get.
Maple Leafs needed a little bit of good news, although it didn't really help too much over this weekend. Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Carlo left the game last week against the Detroit Red Wings, but they did manage to play in the 2 losses over the weekend against the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. And finally, Linus Ullmark, backup goaltender for Matt Sogard in the Sens 7-1 win over Vegas. Go figure that one. Allmark has not played since December the 27th, but is expected to start in the Senators' next game against Colorado on Wednesday. But in a league that you cannot figure from night to night, the Senators, who have been spinning their wheels again, throw up 7 against Vegas?
Yeah, Vegas totally out of that game early for whatever reason. It wasn't that they had injuries or anything like that. It just wasn't their day. And Ottawa, with their red uniforms on, were able to take advantage of the road-weary Vegas Golden Knights. It was something Ottawa badly needed, though, to stay in the race for the wildcard spots.
The only goal for the Golden Knights in that one, coming off the stick of Rasmus Andersson, who had made his Golden Knights debut Friday against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
What's interesting about Rasmus Andersson was he got traded from Calgary, Canada, to Vegas. And Vegas is in the United States, obviously, and had immigration work to get a visa prepared to play and work in the United States. That took some time, and so he didn't get to play in Boston. But when the team came over the border to Canada and was playing 2 games in Ontario, that being Toronto and Ottawa, Andersson didn't have to worry about his visa because he was still in Canada playing and not in the United States. And hopefully for him and for the Knights, he'll have that visa by the time they play their next game in the U.S.
Games coming up the next couple of nights. On Monday, you, sir, going to be in Madison Square Garden, being honored as part of the latest in a series of, let's call it quote-unquote celebrations of the Rangers' 100th anniversary season as New York takes on the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, and that will be fun. Maybe not for the Rangers and their fans, but it'll be fun for us to be there and be at Madison Square Garden, and great to see the guys that were a part of that era.
You may get the biggest reception of all.
Well,
Given
we'll
the way
see.
the Rangers season is gone, just saying.
Yeah, it may happen. Usually Messier takes the biggest applause, and for good reason. But we'll see what happens. Exciting time, fun night, and we'll see what it brings.
2 other games I'm looking at on Monday, Utah at Tampa. Both teams hot despite the Tampa Bay loss in Columbus on Saturday. And also looking at Anaheim and Edmonton. A lot of high octane should be expected in that one. And on Tuesday, want to see the Buffalo Sabres in Toronto? 2 teams headed in opposite direction. I think Golden Knights Canadiens will be an outstanding game. And the Mammoth playing the second of their back-to-back visit Sunrise to play the Florida Panthers. That will wrap up our show for today. If you are listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and can leave us a review, please do so. And if you tune into us via YouTube, please subscribe. Our website is NHL Wraparound, and in our blog section, I want to make a special shout out on Neil's picks, what we call Smith's picks. And after your worst night of the season, on Thursday, you rebound with a 17-5-1 weekend.
Yeah, it was very fortunate, but we want to tell everybody that we're going to start doing these on audio after the Olympic break. I'll be giving you them not just in the blog, and so that should be fun. So you can tune in and get those in the audio version.
But as they say in infomercials, but wait, there's more, because we're also going to add something a little bit new to our repertoire here. We usually record on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, short shifts, bookending, NHL Wraparound. But given the fact that there's also news that breaks regarding player injuries, coaching firings, and trades, we figured, you know what? It'd be great to be able to release something almost immediately following those events happening. So we're going to start doing quick takes immediately And I think we're both excited about that because it's going to be instant analysis of any major item that happens in the National Hockey League.
Anything that breaks, it's worthwhile, that's worthy of it. We'll do quick takes and release them out there, and hopefully you'll enjoy them.
I think the immediacy of it is kind of a hole that we have wanted to fill, and that is certainly going to do that for both of us. NHL Wraparound comes up on Wednesday. We will welcome back Buffalo News columnist Mike Harrington. And you remember at the start of the season when the Sabres got off to that awful start, he came on and joined us. And now that the Sabres are positioning themselves to be back in the playoffs for the first time in 15 years, we thought it would be fun to have Mike on again.
No, it will be fun, and I love to hear this with Mike. He's very good, very strong in his opinions, and so we'll see how they've changed since he was last on.
Enjoy the hockey Monday and Tuesday, and we look forward to speaking with you again on Wraparound on Wednesday.